What's up, everybody, and welcome to this Tuesday episode of Pelicans Daily, brought to you by Fan Arch. I'm your host, David Grubb, editor-in-chief of thebirdwrites.com. The Pelicans had an interesting Monday and get back on the court on Tuesday, so let's get right on into it. It is game day for the New Orleans Pelicans, and tonight they will host the Los Angeles Clippers at the Smoothie King Center. I will be there for the game, of course. The Clippers come to town riding a three-game winning streak, and the Pelicans, of course, have lost four in a row. The good news for the Pelicans, the return of Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum. They'll both be active for this one after they sat out the loss to the to the Grizzlies on Sunday night. Zion did not play in that earlier matchup against the Clippers in December when the Pelicans lost at home. So that should be a boost alongside CJ McCollum, who had 33 points in that narrow loss, including 8 3-pointers. The Pelicans offense will be very happy to see both of them back on the floor. Kelly Olynyk, however, will sit this one out for rest. Jose Alvarado is questionable. Jose coming off a very good game against the Grizzlies where he had 11 points and a career high 11 assists. Of course, he provides some defense as well. The Pelicans will miss him. But for the Clippers, if you're talking about the Clippers, they're going to play solid defense. And they are one of the most well-coached teams in the NBA under Tyronn Lue. The Clippers, they will be playing without Norman Powell and Ben Simmons. Powell has been very good for the Clippers all season long, a major loss for them. Ben Simmons, not so much. Well, if we're going to see the Pelicans get a win, it's going to have to start for them by stopping James Harden. Harden has been on fire lately, averaging almost 32 points per game over his last four, including a 50-point game against the Detroit Pistons. The Beard is averaging over 32 points a game over his last four meetings with the Pelicans. Inside, it's Ivica Zubac. He's been playing very well for the Clippers. He's in the middle of a run of 8 straight double-doubles for them. That's the longest streak of his career, and he's posting 24 points and 12 boards over his last four games. That is going to be a tough matchup inside for the Pelicans bigs. Bolstering the front court for that game against the Clippers, the Pelicans made a noticeable roster move, adding NBA veteran big man Mo Bamba on a 10-day contract. Now, if that name sounds familiar, of course, it's because Bamba has bounced around the NBA for a while, though the Pelicans are hoping he still has something left in the tank. Bamba is also someone that the Pelicans fans have had their eyes on as a potential fit for this roster as well. So what does this signing mean for New Orleans? Let's go ahead and break it down. Bamba started the season with the Clippers, played 28 games for them, and even got a couple of starts, but he was in a very limited role in LA. Still, when he did get on the floor, he produced pretty good numbers, shooting a career-high 62% from the floor. He was later traded to Utah along with P.J. Tucker and then waived by the Jazz along with P.J. Tucker. But instead of waiting around, he joined the New Orleans Pelicans G League team, the Birmingham Squadron. That's where he's been. And he's put up some very nice numbers for the Squadron, averaging about 20 points and 13 rebounds for them. That had to catch the front office's attention. I know that I've spoken about Mo Bamba with other members of the media at games, just wondering why he hadn't been called up, considering how bad the Pelicans have been with the interior defense and their production there lately. The problem is that he's an NBA journeyman for a reason. He's one of those highly skilled but highly inconsistent bigs out of the University of Texas. Bamba, if you go back, of course, he was the 6th overall pick way back in 2018. Big expectations for him when he came into the league, but his NBA journey hasn't been the smoothest ride for him. He's played for Orlando, the Lakers, the Sixers, and the Clippers. His best season, that was back in 21-22 with the Magic. That season, he averaged about 10.6 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game, and he made 38% of his three-point attempts. Injuries and inconsistency have been the biggest problem for Mo Bamba, but the talent, it's absolutely there. What does he bring to the Pelicans? Well, they've been struggling with front court depth all season. As we know, Yves Missi seems to have hit a rookie wall. The physicality has really taken its toll on him in making that transition from college. Remember, college players, they're only playing about 35 games per season. This is also a young man with not a lot of basketball experience. Physically, He came into this league not ready to be a starting center in the NBA, especially considering the size and the strength of some of the bigs that he's going in. You saw it against a Zach Edey for the Grizzlies, just overmatched at times physically, even though Yves Missi continues to show good signs. It's just a struggle for him on a night to night basis. Carlo Matkovic, he gives you flashes on offense, but Carlo's not really a solid defender either. He can give you a couple of blocks when he's, because of his athleticism. But as far as a possession defender, Pelicans are just lacking there. They need help. Bamba gives them a legit 7-footer who can block shots, who can rebound, and he can space the floor. If he does make an impact over these 10 days, there is some chance that he could stick around for the rest of the season. The bottom line with this move, it's a low risk, potentially high reward move for the New Orleans Pelicans. If Bamba can deliver, this could be a very good addition in the short term. Don't expect too much for him though. Mo Bamba at this stage is probably more famous for the song that bears his name than for his game. He's always had good games against the Pelicans, it seems like, particularly when he was with Orlando, so we shall see. But whatever he doesn't solve the Pelicans' long term needs at starting center. Who could the Pelicans be targeting for that role this offseason? Let's take a look at those options right now. Start with the biggest problem for the Pelicans this offseason is that they may not be able to go after really big names in the offseason because of the injuries that they have on this roster and the limited financial options that they do have. The Pelicans have a lot of money on the books for next season already and just have two unrestricted free agents. So we start there. Bruce Brown and his $23 million salary, along with Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who is making just $2.3 million. The way Bruce Brown has played so far, I don't see the Pelicans investing that type of money in him. I know David Griffin said he wants to keep Bruce Brown. He likes the fact that he can guard 1 through 5. We've not really seen that. But I think if you're the Pelicans, $23 million is more valuable. That hole that he creates if you let him go is more valuable than whatever he brings to the court for next season. Um, I think Griffin was envisioning potentially as somebody who could fill in as a perimeter defender while Herb Jones recovers from shoulder surgery this offseason. But the Pelicans have bigger holes, I think, and you're going to ultimately get Herb Jones back. So I wouldn't keep him. Jeremiah Robinson Earl's $2.3 million. Look, just it goes away. JRE, it seems, has fallen out of favor. He's playing much less minutes. His role has been reduced lately. He's shown some growth. I'm not mad at JRE for the contributions he's had this season. He's been okay for what you've gotten out of him. But just as a long-term piece, considering the Pelicans' needs in the front court, if you bring him back, I'm not going to be mad, but she shouldn't be a priority this offseason. DeJounte Murray would be the contract that maybe you try to offload at $31.5 million and not a real long term. I think only 2 years left after this season on his deal, but he's not going anywhere due to that Achilles injury. You've got to recover. You're not going to pay the tax, which would be more draft picks or more player capital to offload his contract. You're trying to maybe get some value for him and find a replacement in the draft potentially. Who are reasonable targets for the Pelicans? I think the list is limited to 3 guys. Walker Kessler of the Utah Jazz, Daniel Gafford of the Dallas Mavericks, and then you're talking about former LSU Tiger and current Minnesota Timberwolves player Naz Reid. All 3 of those guys have been favorites of Pelicans fans for a while. You start with Kessler. He's the best defensive player in that group. He's coming off a huge night against the Toronto Raptors where he had 18 points, 25 rebounds, and 8 blocks. Let's do that again. 18 points, 25 rebounds, and 8 blocks. 18 of those rebounds came in one half, which tied the Utah Jazz's franchise record. This season, he is averaging a career high with 11.6 points. He's also at a career high with 12.3 rebounds per game, along with 2.4 blocks, which matches his career best. At 7 feet, 245 pounds, he has the size and the game to be a problem alongside Zion Williamson and Trey Murphy in a much longer than Pelicans front court. He is not a shooter from distance. That's not what you're getting when you sign Walker Kessler. He's only made 7 3-pointers in a just under 190 NBA games. But that's not why you're bringing him in. What you do is you get somebody who fills the hole in the donut that is the middle of the Pelicans defense. Historically, if you're talking about a fit with Zion Williamson, Zion hasn't had a problem with big men who play near the basket. He didn't play poorly when Jonas Valanciunas was on the floor, even though Jonas, yes, can step out a little further from the rim, but Jonas did most of his work around the basket. He didn't play poorly alongside Steven Adams. He didn't play poorly, even if you go back to Derek Favors. The Pelicans were actually pretty good when Zion and Derek Favors were on the floor. The problem is for bigs who can't catch the basketball, and that's the problem with with Yves Missi right now. Yves struggles to catch the basketball in traffic. Kessler does not have that problem. He is a much more solid player in that regard. Moving on, I have liked Daniel Gafford for a long time, and I think he would be an excellent fit for the Pelicans going back to his Washington Wizards days. Injuries have been a little bit of a problem this season, but he still played in 51 games and made 28 starts for the Mavericks. He is only 26 years old, and he's also having one of the best seasons in his career. He's averaging more than 12 points per game in Dallas this season while shooting just under 70% from the floor. For his career, he's a 71% shooter. What you get out of Daniel Gafford is a slightly smaller, slightly older Walker Kessler in a lot of ways. He is a solid shot blocker, though not as good of a rebounder, but still very effective on the glass. He's slated to make $14.3 million next season in the final year of his contract. When you're talking about the Mavs, you're talking about a team that looks like it's headed for a self-inflicted rebuild following the trade of Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. If you've got Kyrie Irving coming off an ACL injury, Kyrie's going to be a free agent this offseason, so it'll be very interesting, potentially be a free agent. Kyrie can opt out of his deal with Dallas. It's going to be potentially very interesting to see what he does and how the Dallas Mavericks manage this, because he could likely miss all of next season with this injury, considering his age and the type of injury that it is. And then you look at the Anthony Davis situation, whether or not Anthony Davis wants to anchor himself to Dallas for the long term. Maybe he wants to go back to Chicago, where he grew up and make an impact there. The Bulls certainly could use a front court player to go along with what they have on the perimeter. So I think there's a strong possibility that the Pelicans could steal Daniel Gafford away from the Mavericks. What do you give for him? We'll get into that maybe at another time. But certainly then let's move on to Naz Reid. And I think Naz Reid would be the number one option in the minds of most Pelicans fans. There's a lot to like about his game. Let's start with just the durability. Since the start of the 21-22 season, Naz Reid has played in at least 65 games every season. He played in 81 last year when he won the NBA Sixth Man of the Year award. He's put up comparable numbers this year to what he did last season. His shooting numbers are slightly down, but his scoring average is up to almost 15 points per game. He's shooting 47% from the floor overall, just under 40% from beyond the three-point arc. He doesn't get to the free throw line a ton, but that's nitpicking. He does make his free throws at a decent clip. On the other side of the ball, he can guard mobile bigs on the perimeter, still hold down the post at 6'9" and a very solid 264 pounds. I think if he were to join the Pelicans, depending on the matchup, he's your starting power forward in lineups with Zion Williamson and a legitimate starting center, or he is your first big off the bench in that super six-man role. But his potential along Zion Williamson would be a lot of fun to watch. He has a $15 million player option for next season, which he is likely to turn down considering his value around the league. At 25 years old with that skill set, he is going to be in high demand. The Pelicans would probably have to work maybe a sign and trade deal to really make it worth his while to give him the kind of money that he's looking for to come to New Orleans. But you never know what the possibilities are. One thing we do know about next season is the Pelicans will make some history as part of the first ever NBA games played in Australia. That's right. The New Orleans Pelicans are heading to the land down under, so get your Vegemite sandwiches ready. That is a very old reference. I am showing my age if you know what that means. Okay, the Pelicans are making history as the first NBA team to play in Australia, taking on Melbourne United and Southeast Melbourne Phoenix this October during the preseason. Let's break down what this means for the team, the league, and basketball fans worldwide. Excuse me. David Griffin, the Pelicans' executive vice president of basketball operations, was in Australia for the announcement. This is more than just a couple of preseason games as far as the NBA and the NBL are concerned. The NBL is the National Basketball League of Australia, and probably the second best domestic basketball league, in one country in the world behind the NBA. This is a major milestone for both of these leagues. The NBL has been sending teams to the U.S. to compete in the preseason against NBA squads for a few years now. But this will be the first time that an NBA team actually goes to Australia. It'll be happening at Melbourne Park. The games will be played October 3rd and October 5th, 2025, in what's being called the Melbourne Series. The league is treating this as a very big moment. There was a huge press conference in Australia again, with David Griffin was there, and honestly, this is about the growth of the game in Australia, and they have seen a huge swell of support for the game of basketball there. It's not just about basketball, of course. The Pelicans, the NBA, the NBL, they will be having a full experience for fans, including a lot of community events. The NBA Cares program will be there, and there will be a big fan night on October 4th. So for hoops fans in Melbourne, they'll get to see the Pelicans, and we do know the Pelicans have a very strong international fan base. This is their chance to get up close and personal with the NBA, as they have never done that before. The Pelicans will be sending the entire team down there. It's not like they're going to send, G League squad or whatever. And they're going off against some teams that have a history of producing some NBA talent. Southeast Melbourne Phoenix is a very good team. Melbourne United, another very good team. So expect some competitive action. This won't be just, it should be spirited competition. The Australians have something to prove on their home territory. Let's hope the Pelicans don't have to face the curse of Dyson Daniels in these games. Of course, Dyson, the only Australian-born player to play for the Pelicans in franchise history. He was, of course, traded to the Atlanta Hawks last season and is likely going to be an All-NBA defensive performer, all-defensive performer this season. There will be tickets available that you can get through New Orleans Pelicans, but I'll be watching it at home, excuse me, most likely on ESPN or wherever the game is broadcast. So if you're in Melbourne or tuning in like I am, this should be a must-watch moment in New Orleans Pelicans basketball history. A very cool thing indeed. All right, folks, that's going to be a wrap for this episode of Pelicans Daily. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Hit those buttons below and let me know what you think about everything we've discussed here today. You can also follow me on social media at DM Grubb, as well as thebirdrights.com for more Pelicans coverage. Until next time, take care.